It's 3:15, and that means it's time for...
The Real Deal with Bill McNeil.
That's right. Welcome once again to The Real Deal with Bill McNeil. I'm your host, Bill McNeil, and you're probably wondering exactly what is the real deal today.
Hey, good question.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and it's a bit of a light Marvel news week, but I got a few things I want to talk about today. We're going to talk about the new announcement for Marvel Voices Legacy #1. You know, this is the third issue of the series. It's kind of a spin-off of a podcast that they have to take unique voices and tell new stories with established Marvel characters. I don't know. Is anyone else wondering, like, who are these comic books for? Like what's the purpose of the comic book? Other, is it just a vehicle to retell the same stories from their podcast? So, I don't know. It's a legitimate question. We'll talk about that, and I definitely want to hear from you guys on that one. Also, we got word that Black Panther is no longer on hiatus. It's returning in February. This is the final stretch of Coates' second run with the character. He's going to be winding down. He took some interesting choices on this. We're going to talk about that a little bit, but this is going to be the end of Ta-Nehisi Coates' run on or his second run on Black Panther, and I'll talk about some of the things that I think might have hurt the sales and enthusiasm for the series. And finally, I do want to talk about Taskmaster. I just read the first issue yesterday, and I knew it was a bit late. I hadn't planned on reviewing the series or even the comic book. I didn't think it was that important, but it was a really bad comic. I got to talk about some of the weird characterization, and I think Jed McKay missed the mark on this one big time. It was pretty laughable. That part's not going to be all that serious, but I did want to point it and laugh at it because it was so strange. But I do want to say this before we get into the details of all these stories. If you're enjoying the channel, you haven't subscribed to Thinking Critical YouTube. Hit the bell for notifications. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this. Give me a thumbs down if you don't. Either way, I definitely want to hear your comments in the comment section. Go in there and give me your feedback. Are you interested in Marvel Voices? Is that an anthology that is geared towards you? I want to hear from you. Or are you as kind of perplexed as I am? Also, definitely want to hear your thoughts on Ta-Nehisi Coates' Black Panther run and the recent issue of Taskmaster. Am I overreacting? Is it as bad as I think it is? I think it's terrible. Now, getting into it, this, like I mentioned earlier, this is the third issue of Marvel Voices. Of course, they're all #1s. Marvel Voices #1, Marvel Voices Indigenous Voices #1, and now Marvel Voices Legacy #1. So it wouldn't be Marvel if there wasn't some type of ordering scheme where they all have to be #1 issues, even though it's essentially the same series. And this kind of spun out of a podcast. The first one had some more celebrity names attached to it. The second one didn't have a lot of people. I think a lot of writers people were aware of. Marvel Voices Legacy #1. It does have a couple of established creators, well, some of the established creators with Marvel. But I'm wondering, what is the purpose of Marvel Voices? It is to give voice, to Marvel characters from a unique perspective. This is what Angelique Roche said to Sci-Fi Wire. With each one of the stories created, we have a chance to see unique perspectives of all the creatives involved, and in many ways, the impact over the 80-year legacy of Marvel Universe and its characters on writers and artists of color. That is the beauty of Marvel Voices. It strives to bring to the forefront the unique experiences and perspectives of diverse communities through the lens of and our shared love of the Marvel Universe. Now, I'm certain there are some people that this comic is for them, but I just don't think it's a lot. I think most people read Marvel comics and Marvel characters to get the perspective, of the character in the Marvel Universe. Does anyone believe that the story involving Storm and Marvel Voices Legacy #1 is going to be in canon and it's going to be adhered to? The editors at Marvel are going to forget this before it even got published, and they're not really going to promote it. They're hoping to get a write-up maybe in, I don't know, the New York Times, Hollywood Reporter, stuff like that, maybe to get some good publicity, basically back pats. But I don't think they're actually really trying to affect any change with these, and that's what I kind of find strange about it. If you look at Marvel Voices #1, some of the creators, Evan Narcisse, Jeffrey Thorne, Brandon Montclair, James Englehart, Jeffrey Thorne is writing some stories in DC's future state, but has he had a story in, a published comic, or is he planning to have a comic published through Marvel since this was released in early 2020? I haven't heard anything. I don't imagine they have anything really for him. And we're looking at Marvel's indigenous voices. Does anybody think Marvel's going to give Darcy Little Badger like an opportunity on a title or a miniseries or something after this? I mean, shouldn't this be an opportunity to give these people some shine and maybe promote them with the idea that they get some traction or something in Marvel moving forward? Obviously, one of the creators in the first book is working with DC. And here in the third volume, Legacy #1, we've got, I guess the headliner is Nnedi Okorafor. She did work on the Shuri series. It felt like it was probably going to be an important character after the movie, probably is a more important character after the tragedy that we experienced this year as far as the Black Panther movie. But did you read Shuri? Those had great covers, beautiful covers. Shuri's not my favorite character, but that cover will bring people in. You open the comic book. It was one of the worst illustrated comic books I've ever seen in my life. It's like Marvel went out and sabotaged the creator. Even if she wrote a good Shuri story, no one was going to go out there and pay good hard-earned money for a terribly illustrated comic book. It's not like they did Nnedi any favors like with that. And then, Danny Lord, I guess, is the second headliner. She's going to be writing the new Ironheart series in 2020. We'll see about that. Whether Danny gets a good comic artist, I doubt it. Instead of segregating these creators, why aren't they putting these in a Marvel Presents with an actual headliner? I guess this is supposed to come out during Black History Month, or to kind of celebrate that, but you could have a headliner. Christopher Priest is still writing out there. You got Brian Hill. He did some great things. There's some great Black artists out there. Obviously, Chris Cross. He just got announced to be working on some new stuff at DC Comics. You got Dennis Cowan still. There's a lot of great Black creators. Was Kevin? Is it Jericho? He's a really good artist. I don't ever see him working on anything right now. It's crazy. I'm sorry, he's a really good writer. You don't ever get to see him really writing anything with the big two. I mean, those guys could be headlining, as the number 1, 2, 3 build kind of creators on a, Marvel Presents Black History Month special, and you could give these up and coming creators second billing and get their names out there, and maybe people will read there and they have a great story and they get a little bit of traction. But how many people are really going to go and buy a Nnedi Okorafor headline anthology book? Even if you think she's great, that's only 10 or 12 pages. Are you going to go out and spend $8 on a comic book for that? I mean, I guess these are $5. Well, that's what it looks like. But still, it's they're not cheap. And I don't know. And there's some great Black creators out there in the comic industry. I don't know. It sounds like Brian Hill might not be working with Marvel anymore, but he had a great series out recently called Killmonger. Was that ever promoted? Did you get to see it promoted? I didn't see it promoted. I promoted it on my channel because it was great. They never really mentioned that. The only prominent Black creators I can remember really being promoted on Marvel really are Ta-Nehisi Coates with Captain America. It didn't even feel like they were celebrating his return to Black Panther, even though a lot of what he and Brian Stelfreeze created from that series was used in the movie. It was instrumental as far as the look of Wakanda, at least. It felt like they borrowed more of the character stuff from Christopher Priest's run, but it didn't feel like that was being a big deal. I don't know. It feels disingenuous. We're supporting the cause. We put out a comic book that's lightly promoted, maybe gets a write-up in some mainstream publications and then doesn't sell because there's no headliner on it. Who's the headliner on this comic book? Storm, Miles Morales. Obviously, those are great characters, but this isn't like a Miles Morales comic or a Storm comic or a Blade comic. They're going to have really short stories. I think Monica Rambeau's in here as well. I don't know. Like, who's this comic book for? I don't think this is for Marvel fans. I think Marvel fans read Marvel characters for the unique perspective of the Marvel characters. Then now you do like what the creator brings, and you hope that it's different and a new take that falls within like the history of the character. But I don't know. It always feels disingenuous. It feels like DC does a lot more stuff as far as like promoting people of color, creators of color on their rosters and stuff like that. It feels like they get bigger billing. Like who is it? N.K. Jemisin. She came over and did she's doing the new Green Lantern Far Sector book. Nobody's ever heard of her, but they gave her a great art. She got Jamal Campbell. That book, whether you like it or not, it looks like $1 million. But I don't know. What's Marvel trying to accomplish here? And then of course they're going to do some, they're going to release Marvel Voices Legacy #1 and release these Black History Month variant covers by Hernanda Souza. And it's nice that she gets some, she'll get some sales out of them. I'm sure she got a pretty decent rate for these 3 covers. But, does anybody think that like Marvel is going to be committed to promoting like Black creators moving forward or trying to invest in them? It would take a lot of money really at this point to really go into like the Black community and it would take time too to really see some dividends. Like you'd have to go in there. Like where are the creator workshops or where's the mentor programs where they're going out there and identifying the new up and coming young Black creators or just creators of color and giving them opportunities and developing them to where one day, getting them some work on maybe some anthologies outside of Marvel or DC, but then eventually getting them in there, getting them on a Marvel Comics Presents. Unfortunately, they don't have that right now. And then, moving them up to the main line. It feels like a lot of times Marvel's so anxious to get a creator and be able to say, look, we got a Black creator, or we got an Asian creator, that just kind of like throw them in the deep end, like almost setting them up for failure. It almost felt that's what it felt like they were doing with Eve Ewing. It just turned out she was a good writer when they put her on Ironheart. But you think about giving her Ironheart, like that's literally taking, chicken shit and having to make chicken salad. She's taking like picking up the broken pieces of a character that Brian Michael Bendis ruined and from day one and left behind that a lot of people just didn't like, and she had to go fix it. And she did a good job. She did an excellent job. For the circumstances that Eve Ewing had, I think she succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. But it could have been. I don't think her Marvel team-up book was very good. I don't know if that was an editorial decision that Peter Parker, Spider-Man, needed to be subservient to Miss Marvel. But there was a weird relationship there. I don't know if that's how she writes them or if that was editorial. I have a feeling it was editorial. It feels like she's probably a better writer than that. Hopefully she does a good job on Champions and Outlaw, but, it almost felt like a fluke. Like most of the time, like it just doesn't ever seem to work for them. So I don't know. What do you guys? Who are these Marvel Voices comic books for? Are they for comic book readers? I don't think they're really for very many comic book readers. Comic feels like a waste of resources this time. The industry's struggling. You think they need to bring in some more bang for their buck, but maybe they sell a lot better than I can imagine. But it doesn't feel like they're for readers. I think it feels like it's just so they can do a press release and say they did it, and give themselves a round of applause and say we supported creators of color, and then we'll do it again next year when it's Black History Month. I don't know. This is the way I feel about it. Let me know what you guys think about the Marvel Voices series, and if you think it's effective, and what's the purpose besides, an opportunity for people. Like, is it supposed to be promoting them and moving them up in the hierarchy? Is it developing them as writers? Because I don't. If that's what it is, I don't think it works. I think like Marvel Presents and other opportunities like that, workshops would probably be much more effective. Now, moving on to Ta-Nehisi Coates' Black Panther, we do know it hasn't been solicited. Everyone's like, where the hell is Black Panther? Ta-Nehisi Coates obviously had done some interesting stuff. It's returning in February to conclude his run. I believe it's going to be, is it issue 23? I think it's issue 23. It is issue 23. So that will be coming up. And I do think, I'll give Ta-Nehisi Coates this. I think he listened to his criticism of his first run, which could be boring at times and wasn't extremely action-based storytelling. He's more of like a thesis writer. He's not really an action story writer. But it felt like he took the criticism and tried to do something cool and different with Black Panther, obviously taking him into space. But like, who wanted to see Black Panther in space? Now, you can do things that are unexpected and make them work, but it never felt like he really pulled that off. And it was kind of weird. Like the people back on Earth like forgot he left. Like Shuri didn't seem to really care that he was gone. Like she should be saving her brother. He's missing in space. She never really wanted to do that. And then you look over in like the Avengers series. Was Black Panther in space? No, he was on Earth with the Avengers. This is a continuity problem. It's easy to forget that Black Panther was in space in Ta-Nehisi Coates' run, and that's a Marvel issue. I also think this is this series was hampered by Brian Stelfreeze's art not being associated with it. I think the stuff Daniel Acuña's done is cool. Like that cover is pretty dope. But I think it was a more transformative version of a Black Panther with the Stelfreeze art. Also, like the intergalactic empire of Wakanda. T'Challa goes out into space, finds an alternate version of Wakanda where they become like aggressors and they're conquering planets and stuff. They took him as a slave. Really interesting stuff. It's too bad it didn't work, I guess. It feels like his first one was actually much more successful, even though this was probably, as far as storytelling, comic book storytelling was probably much more successful as far as execution goes, in my opinion. But never really took off. It's felt like an afterthought for a very long time. So we'll see what Mr. Coates does with Black Panther as he wraps this up, and I'm imagine they're going to relaunch the series at the new #1, a new creator rather soon. I don't know, who do you guys want to see on Black Panther moving forward? Who do you want to be the next writer on Black Panther? And if you're a Ta-Nehisi Coates fan, where do you want to see him move from here? Obviously, he's still on Captain America. I haven't heard that he's wrapping that up, but is there another character you want to see him do? Me personally, after reading Killmonger, I would love to see Brian Edward Hill on Black Panther and incorporating that Killmonger stuff, maybe even do a prequel. And maybe see him, I don't know, run into each other. Like, do they have to follow the continuity of the movies? I don't think they have to. I'd love to see Black Panther versus Killmonger kind of thing. Like, do that on a big epic, like 24-issue, 12-issue, like story arc. I think it would be really dope. I think Brian probably earned that. Bring Juan Ferreira back, who was the artist. That'd be dope. That'd be really cool. So moving on to the last topic of today, we got to talk about this Taskmaster Cup. Now, I like Taskmaster. Interesting looking character. I guess people oftentimes mistake him for Skeletor, just because of the character design. But he's like the master strategist. If he sees someone do a task, he can figure out how they did it and like combat it immediately. Like he's got some cool powers. He should be a pretty evil villain, but it doesn't feel like Jed McKay felt that way. Like the opening of this comic was just such a joke. I remember I tweeted out when I read it, I was like, I think Marvel's yanking my dick. I was like, this can't be real. And I guess there's like some type of charity golf tournament, and one guy brought in Taskmaster and his rival brought in Bullseye because they're hired guns. Get it? Get the joke, Jed McKay? They're hired guns. So they hired Taskmaster and Bullseye to be their golfing partners. And, he's talking about how he has the best skull costume 3 years running, and just the dialogue. I don't think Jed MacKay realizes there's a difference between Taskmaster and Skeletor, so he writes him as a complete boob instead of someone like really dangerous. He's just the least dangerous villain of all time. He's just a goofball that he's quite pathetic. There's no one to be feared. This is only the third Taskmaster like series ever, probably miniseries. And you don't get these opportunities very often. I hate to see it completely wasted on Jed MacKay, who seems to think the character is an absolute joke. Unfortunately, he's not a funny writer, so the jokes don't laugh for this character. They might laugh if it was Skeletor, but they don't land for Taskmaster, at least in my opinion. Then you find out that Marie Hill's dead, and it looks like Taskmaster's the one that did it. So Nick Fury is saving him because he can't stop the Black Widow. Does that sound right? Does it feel like Nick Fury should be able to call Black Widow and say, stand down, he's not the one that did it? He's going to use this. He's going to save him if he helps him out with the task. And this was stupid too. Jed MacKay obviously doesn't read comics, at least Marvel comics. So this is his face when he finds out the Black Widow is the one that's trying to murder him at this golf course. And this is Nick Fury, possibly the greatest killer to walk the earth at present, better than the Winter Soldier. Didn't I read Ed Brubaker's Captain America run? Didn't I watch the Winter Soldier beat her ass in seconds? Like it wasn't even a contest. He just fucked her up and moved on with his life, and he let her live. So I don't know, man. Read more comics, Jed MacKay, and stop trying to be funny because you're not good at it. Certainly stop ruining characters like Taskmaster. We don't get to see a character like this get his own miniseries enough. And it was it's kind of an embarrassment. The comic did pick up from this opening scene on the golf course when it was all yuck jokes and wasn't very funny at all. It did get better as it moved along, but it never got good, and that's unfortunate. So I'm not reading this. Did you enjoy Taskmaster from Jed MacKay? I thought it was awful. Not as bad as Ten of Swords at all, or any of the. Yeah, it's not as bad as Ten of Swords. So it's not the worst, but it was disappointing to read this. So that'll basically wrap us up today with the latest Marvel news. Marvel's Voices. We've got Legacy #1 coming out for Black History Month. Like, who are these comics for? Do you celebrate Black History Month by buying Marvel anthology comics? Is that a big seller for you, or are you in my camp where you think maybe this is more just so they can pat themselves on the back, say they did a good thing for Black creators, and move on with their lives until next February when they try to do something again? I don't know. Feels superficial to me. What do you guys think about Black Panther's run? The Black Panther run by Ta-Nehisi Coates run coming to an end. Are you excited for that? Are you hoping for a grand finale, or did you check out a long time ago? Also, if you read Taskmaster, let me know what you thought. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you guys liked it. I thought it sucked. But I'll see y'all later.